Hi. It's interesting. I'm noticing that there's definitely a bit of nerves here before I talk, um, which is interesting considering a lot of the work that I do brings me to a bit of a vulnerable place generally, and I think people share things that are going on for them or that are hard. That vulnerability, I think, sparks vulnerability, and that when you are open and honest and tell the truth about what you're really going on and what you're really facing into, I think you kind of give permission for others to do the same. And so I'm facing into that and opening and sharing in the only way that I know how. And I guess what really sparked this is a number of weeks ago, and I guess in different stages over the last number of years, I've shared a little bit about me and my story, and when I have done that, I've gotten so many messages from people, so many people reaching out saying, I'm going through something similar, or I feel the same, or, just thank you for sharing because I don't feel so alone. And there's solace even in that, and not needing for me to have to fix anything, or, none of us are ever broken. But I think sometimes in just hearing someone else is going through similar things, especially when we don't really talk about it, it can be really, really helpful. And so I wanted to tell a little bit about me and my story, and I guess how I got to the point where I am now. In that, I guess ever since I can remember, family and friends will attest to this, I've always been like a massive feeler, like feel things deeply, think deeply. A lot of people will comment and describe me as someone with an old head on young shoulders, and I feel that's been ever since I was little. And so with big feelings come big emotions. And when you're little and you don't really understand or know how to process these things, and despite having the best parents and friends and teachers, that I would have ever wished for growing up, there was a lot of big things, to be felt, and also feeling of other people's stuff. And so I remember even, in those times where I would be really overwhelmed or upset or not knowing what was really I was experiencing or feeling. And I remember even, at times, and it was pretty frequent, running into my room and grabbing my pillow and just screaming into my pillow and not knowing what it was, whether it was angry or upset, or, there was just a lot of stuff that I was holding. Whether it was mine or actually it belonged to someone else, but I didn't really know how to process it. And I guess fast forward a number of years, and this continued to be a theme and something that I always experienced. And my friends again will tell you, like, first to cry always at the slightest thing, or whether it was mine or something belonging to someone else, or even on the TV, just always felt very deeply and had a lot of very big thoughts and deep thoughts, and would say things sometimes, and my parents or my grandparents would be like, what did she just say? But in that regard, I think two things, not knowing what to do with that, but then also feeling very different sometimes, in that the level of depth that I would think or feel was sometimes very different to other people. And even if it was or it wasn't, on the surface level, it felt like that because no one talked about these things really, or, shared them more openly. And so I remember that I started suppressing things because I felt like maybe it wasn't the right thing to do because I felt different, and I felt like maybe I was the strange one. And again, it wasn't family's fault, it wasn't friends' fault, anything like that. It was more so my perception of what was going on around me. And I think over the years, this just kept suppressing and suppressing. And if I'd feel things, I'd just, maybe hide them or try not to feel or show or share. And I remember that would start to then lead into, I didn't know it at the time, but manifest itself into anxiety and constantly worrying about everyone and everything, and you know what other people thought. And over time, this progressively became the norm. I remember I would be rehearsing full-blown conversations before I'd even have to go and speak to someone about anything, not even anything difficult, just anything. And as I said, over time, it really did manifest itself in what was anxiety. And I didn't recognize it at the time, but I was never really present. I was always worrying about the future and thinking about things and overthinking things, and yeah, just feeling and worrying ultimately. And I remember being, I don't know where it was, whether it was in uni, college, or whether it was in even just in the back of a toilet in a bar, I'm not sure, but I remember seeing a sign that talked all about the symptoms of anxiety, you know, in terms of what it was that you might have been feeling, or it was kind of like, do you do this? Do you feel that? And I was like, yes, 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 what? How do they, like, I've never talked to someone who felt like that before, and you know, that's how I feel. And in reading that sign, I remember thinking like, oh, there's other people that are like this. It's not just me, you know, and I had a name for it. And even if it wasn't something that in life had a very positive connotation, you know, and even I'm trying to normalize that as much as I can with people now, but even if it was that, at least I knew it wasn't me, or I wasn't the freak, or, you know, there wasn't shame around it, even though there was a level of it, but that other people were the same, and there was a bit of strength and power in that. But I didn't know what to do with it. You know, I knew I still had it, or it was something I experienced frequently, but at least I knew, you know, it wasn't on my own. And so this progressively heightened and heightened and heightened over school, you know, as I did my my leaving cert, or year 12 exams, what they would be over in Australia, and the pressure that I put on myself in that, again, not from anyone else's fault, just from my own, you know, pressure and expectations of what I put on myself. And this led into uni, and I remember, or college as we say in Ireland, but I remember being in college and got to my final exams, and we had like mock exams, which were 3-hour case studies, and we sat and we would have to answer this case study question or problem, and I remember at that point this panic set in over me, and this, what I know now as stress response in the body, because my mind was just going overdrive. And I remember running out of the exam room and going into the bathroom and crying my eyes out. And again, I didn't know what was going on or what was happening. But over time, as that was released in the bathroom, I was able to eventually regain my breath, regain a bit of balance and a bit more ease, and come back and do my exam. But I didn't do as well as I'd have thought I would have, or would have hoped, but at least it was a mock. And so that was another example of where I was like, what is this? You know, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. No one else seems to have this. Why is it just me? But again, never really spoke about it, and just kind of moved on. And so this continued to happen over time, and it began to be something that would regularly come about, you know, and particularly I found on the weekends. I think when I would plant this massive to-do list on myself, and also have that feeling of like I was just exhausted because I was constantly working and doing more and hiding myself in busy. And it got to a point, and this is generally the story that I do share with people who I do work with, or group settings with. And it was cold and dark and rainy Tuesday morning, just like we so often know in winter in Melbourne, and definitely know all throughout the year in Ireland. And I remember I had, you know, big bags underneath my eyes from that 2-3 a.m. conference call that I'd had, which was, you know, over to somewhere in Europe the night before. And also not an unusual thing at the time. And my eyes were just baggy and heavy and grey, and, you know, I was damp because it was lashing rain. I'd forgot my umbrella, and the trams just kept going by with just depressed looking passengers. And eventually when I did get into the office, I remember that feeling of, you know, my heart was absolutely racing as I walked by my desk and saw my phone flashing that red little dot, which told me I probably had 24 missed calls and messages from irate clients, you know, just wanting everything from me and wanting to tell me off about this or that. That was not my fault, but it was my job to deal with. Or the to-do list that was stuck on my desk that was the length of my arm, not to mention the probably 200 odd emails that were sitting from the night before. And what I remember most vividly is not only that beat of the heart or that heaviness or tiredness, but most vividly of all was this sensation that was on my left cheek, this cool sensation. And it was the bathroom floor tile ultimately, because I've had a panic attack and passed out, and it wasn't the first time that week. Panic attack, not the passing out part. But I remember my colleague turned to me and she said, Ash, something's got to change here, when I finally came to. And from there, I started to realise, okay, I need to prioritise my health and my well-being. And went to the doctor's office and was told I was adrenal fatigue, I was suffering burnout, which was actually the second time. And I just kind of ignored the first time because I was like, you know, just work harder, just do more, and then it will be okay, and then I'll be able to relax, and then would never come. And fast forward a few years, it's not like it was a flash in the pan or a silver bullet, but it took for me time to start prioritizing my health. And I took up practices like yoga and like meditation, which helped me move my body, but find some stillness where I could really get to understand and know my mind a little bit more, to start to get to know myself a lot more deeply and those habitual tendencies, you know, that my mind went to in times where I felt overwhelmed or stressed or panicked, and start to be able to have tools, you know, really accessible tools that I could use in my everyday to be able to manage that high pressure corporate life with my personal life, and that happiness and contentment and ease, you know. And like I said, it wasn't like a fix or someone handed me something on a platter and said, here you go. But it took a lot, you know, of discovery and exploration of everything under the sun, retreats and chiros and osteos and Chinese doctors and NLP, you name it, I've done it. Therapy was a really, really helpful one for me. But ultimately, those practices of just being able to meet myself with a little bit more space, a little bit more ease, and they're the things that really stood the test of time, particularly yoga and meditation. Therapy also very much played a massive part in that. But and why I'm sharing this is twofold. That idea of starting to talk to people about things, because that was massive help for me. To share and to understand that when you do share, that takes that level of shame away, and that, you know, feeling like you're on your own. We figure out that we're all just finding our way and doing the best that we can. That was massive. And what I did find also in the second side of that is in sharing and opening up and talking more openly to people, that then started a level of them also talking more openly and opening up and feeling like they could share. But also finding people who actually felt more like home and felt more like my community or my tribe or my, you know, people I just wanted to be around, versus those others who just pretended like nothing was wrong or going on. So where I'm getting to with all of this is, if something is going on for you that's challenging or hard, it might feel like the most counterintuitive thing to do, but please reach out to someone, you know, whether it's me, whether it's a family, friend, colleague, whatever it is, because it helps. It really, really helps. And we need it now more so than ever. I've been hearing so many stories of people struggling, so please do reach out. It does really, really make all the difference. Thanks for listening.